The public meeting to order, September 3rd, 2019, Port of Bellingham. We'll take roll call. Commissioner Bell?
Here.
Commissioner Shepard?
Here.
Commissioner Briscoe's here. Let the record show that all three commissioners are present. Let's see, we're going to go, I'm going to do my meetings here before we do public comment. We have a Marina Advisory Committee meeting Tuesday, September 10th, 2019, at 6 p.m. here in the Commission Chambers, the Harbor Center Building, 1801 Roeder Avenue. We have a TAC, a Technical Airport Advisory Committee meeting, Thursday, September 12th, 2019, at 9:30 a.m. in the ARF Conference Room, 2005 West Bakerview Road, Bellingham International Airport. We also have a BIAC meeting, Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, Thursday, September 12th, 2019 at 5 p.m., also in the ARF Conference Room, 2005 West Bakerview Road, Bellingham International Airport. So do we have anybody signed up for speaking? That's the big zero I got from back there? Okay, so we'll move along to our consent agenda.
A motion to approve the consent agenda items A through J.
Commissioner Shepard, any questions?
I have a couple comments for C, D, and that's it. C and D.
C and D?
C and D.
Go ahead.
Okay. For C, I just wanted to give a thanks to the EDI board and the county council for supporting our work to get broadband installed and stretched out throughout eastern Whatcom County. And I'm excited to see this on our agenda. And I just wanted to ask Gina, while you're here, for what should we be thinking about for phases 2 and 3 for our strategy for funding those two next segments? I know, as far as I understand, we have the funds in place between grants and other support for phase 1. And what's our strategy for the next two?
So thank you for the question. Gina Stark, Economic Development Project Manager. What we are doing is kind of looking across the board. Right now, we are trying to engage the USDA because previously we did not qualify for USDA dollars just because of the way the coverage was. If anybody in a certain area was above a 10 upload and 1 download, our whole entire area did not qualify for funding. So we've been in conversations with the USDA to say, hey, can we relook at this? Is there a way that we can change policies? Been engaged with our federal delegates to help us with that conversation, engaged with Commerce for that conversation. We have been engaged with the Governor Broadband Office that is being created. There is some funding for rural broadband in that, so engaged in conversations about, what does that look like, how many dollars, so engage at the state level in order to figure out how to fund our future segments of 2 and 3. So just really, even though it's kind of in the future, really starting those conversations now of how much is it going to take and where are the potential fundings at the federal and the state levels. So, yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Well, it's a really exciting project. It's gotten lots of good interest, and I'm just thrilled to see it coming online, and certainly we'll be looking to ways to connect with our legislative team in Olympia on ways that we can position this for good funding in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the key is to start having conversations now. Zach Hudgens, who created the legislation for the governor's broadband office, having conversations with him as well. And so it's never too early to have these conversations. So again, always appreciate your guys' support. It's been very, very helpful and encouraging. So thank you so much for that.
Okay.
So question
Go for
before, the WPPA is also engaged on that, correct? Washington Public Ports Authority?
Yeah, WPPA there is a WPPA sub-broadband committee, which I am a member of. And so we do meet on a monthly basis and talk about various things, including funding. So WPPA is very much a part of that and very supportive, and we do strategize about funding and policies, yes.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, hopefully that gets on some of their legislative agenda for when we're in Olympia for this next round.
Yeah, definitely. That is a goal of mine and other port members to get this on the legislative agenda, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have for C. Anybody else? Any comments or questions on C? Okay. And for D, I just, again, wanted to recognize our staff for getting a great grant to put this forward. And could you just remind me how we are in our sequencing for being able to apply for the quiet zone? So if we complete the crossing on Harris Street, and then we are working towards the one at the Community Boating Center. It sounds like there's just some signage that's needed at the crossing closest to Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park. That's going to take care of our crossings. Which other ones are remaining before that South Side Quiet Zone application could be put forward?
Yeah, first of all, Brian Keenan, project engineer. Good evening. So the three port crossings are the Alaska Ferry Crossing, Harris Avenue Crossing that you described earlier, and the FMIP private crossing. Those are the three port crossings. There are two done by the city, one Boulevard Park, and the pedestrian trail crossing at Boulevard Park. So those five total comprise the Fairhaven Quiet Zone. So the next steps would be, we're close on Harris, looking to try to get that to bid this year. We're juggling a lot of different issues there, but working towards it. Alaska Ferry Crossing is still in BNSF's court. That they're looking at the quad gate proposal. And then the city, I think, is pursuing trying to construct the Boulevard Park crossing this year.
So that's the road access to Boulevard Park?
Yes.
The pedestrian crossing at the north side of the park is already completed, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so the work continues.
It does, yeah. Yeah,
And-
we're hopeful to wrap it up here.
And we're waiting on BNSF to give us some feedback on the quad gate option now.
At Alaska
Yeah.
Ferry Crossing, yep, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I didn't get clarification on the signage at the private crossing. Where are we at on that?
So that's what was proposed during the diagnostic meeting years ago. The city and the port agreed at that time that when the city does the Boulevard Park Road crossing, that they would have their contractor install the necessary signs at FMIP.
Okay.
And the port would then pay for that work. But, so it's a separate, not done as a separate project, but tied together.
So that, how far is the city away from doing the one at Boulevard Park? Do you know?
I don't have a real great pulse on it. The last time I spoke to the city staff, they had mentioned they were still waiting on some info from BNSF as well, trying to get the agreements and the costs figured out. So
Boy,
It's,
without government moves slow, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, we've had,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I think we all bring it up because there's been so many people come to talk to us about it, and
Right.
the residents on the south side have been very organized, and want them to know and other people to know that it takes a lot of time, and it's not just because of inaction on our part. We have some other players here who are less than responsive for.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
The quad gate, what's their status on that? They're gonna review it? Or are there none of these quad gates anywhere else in Whatcom County?
No, so the city's completed at least one quad gate crossing. I think that's C Street. Actually, and then also the new crossing at Laurel is a quad gate as well. Is that correct? Anyway, they've done a few of them.
Yeah, so, and they're studying it, trying to, I don't quite follow. Maybe I missed something.
Well,
BNSF
yes.
is studying it and going to get back to us on that?
No, so we proposed the quad gate crossing at Alaska Ferry Crossing.
Okay,
So our consultant designed that proposal. That goes then to BNSF. They vet that design process and follow up with any revisions that they require. And then, so that's where this is in the process.
okay.
The next step would then be to, assuming there are no further changes requested, they would respond back and say, this is how much it'll cost to implement the quad gate crossing
Okay.
and the annual maintenance fees thereafter.
So is it our design we gave to them, or is it their design?
It's our design, and they take the design and vet it
Okay,
through their design team.
But our design was created with consultants that are professionals in doing this, so they're used to doing railroad crossings. Our staff doesn't have
so
that
these folks
expertise.
have done these quad, did they do the other ones here in Bellingham?
I don't know that.
Not, I don't believe the city used our consultant earlier, but the consultant we have for the Harris Avenue crossing is the same that the city is using for the F Street crossing.
Okay.
Which may occur next year.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to see if if it's kind of all the same stuff. I don't know why it would take them so long to vet it.
Yeah,
But-
can't speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it for me.
Commissioner Bell, do you have any,
No, I had all my questions answered, so I'm good.
All right, thank you.
do you have anything on the consent? Nothing? I have nothing, so with that, Karen.
A motion to approve the consent agenda items A through J.
Commissioner Shepard,
Aye.
Commissioner Bell,
Aye.
Commissioner Briscoe's aye. Carries 3-0. Thank you. Maybe we should put this off, I'm thinking.
Negative, sir.
That's a negative ghostwriter, huh? Thank you for your patience with us
Thank you for your
putting,
patience.
putting you off.
No problem. All right, Tamara Sobjak, Director of Finance. So this is January through June financials. That's a little late, but that's where we are. So just getting started, we'll look at revenues first. So as you know, we've had some challenges this year with revenues. Comparing this year to last year, first 6 months of 2018, we brought in $21.3 million in revenues. That same time period in 2019, we brought in 18.5. The majority of that really, though, is due to the non-operating side of that. So more MOTCA grant and insurance payments came in last year because we were doing more cleanups. The operating revenues did exceed 2018's numbers, but it still was below. That 13.2 million is still 600,000 below budget. So we are facing some revenue challenges this year. Looking at 2018 expenses for the first half, 17.2, and then comparing that to this year, first 6 months, 17 million expenses. So running right at last year. The operating expenses are about $475,000 under budget. So compared that to what we're under budget revenue, we're about $125,000 short. So where we plan to be. Drilling into the divisions, aviation, their revenues are down. It's about $400,000 lower than what they planned for the first 6 months. But their expenses are also lower than budget, about $200,000. So they're about $200,000 under net, what they expected to be. So Marinas revenues, they're both revenue and expenses just under budget and a little right at last year's. I looked at the July financials, just wondering if this was a seasonal thing, and it is. July is catching up to what we planned. So looks like Marinas are pretty much right on schedule. So the shipping terminal, while the revenues are still under budget, they are $200,000 higher than last year, so it is starting to pick up. And then expenses are not increasing at the same rate as revenues are, so their net income is higher than planned. So good news at the shipping terminal.
And if I can butt in really quickly, some more good news on the shipping terminal is that our rock contractor, McAmis, got the contract from the Army Corps of Engineer for the South Jetty. So they've been pushing rock through Bellingham for the North Jetty. The South Jetty is 400,000 tons. And I think that's twice as big as what the North Jetty is, or maybe even more than twice as big. 3 times as big as what the North Jetty was. So big contract probably coming our way. We got to work out the details with McManus. But those big rocks, I saw a 27-ton come by today, so we'll be seeing more of those.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah. And is the rock
He's
continuing?
grinning.
It's a big rock. I like it.
Are we continuing to see the rock quarried from Whatcom and Skagit counties? Do we expect that to continue?
I think they're mostly coming out of Skagit. I think early on they came out of Whatcom, but that quarry decided they didn't want to do that anymore. So I think they're all coming out of Skagit.
Okay. Great.
Great. So looking at the cruise terminal, the first 6 months revenues are right on track. The expenses are a bit over budget, but that's explainable because we had to pay the $25,000 deductible for the Adamson claim in 2019. So that hit this budget. Real estate is running a little over revenues, and that's really due to concession fees coming in at different times of the year. I wouldn't expect revenues at the end of the year to be above budget. The other thing that will affect this budget is we won't see the effect of the shipyard until this quarter and fourth quarter, so we'll see possibly a hit to that. And then overhead costs, of course, are running right as schedule. They're pretty easy to estimate and to predict. It looks like they're a little bit over budget, but they're not because we do have some front-loaded expenses like the audit and some subscriptions and dues that we pay the beginning of the year. And then public priorities, the revenues are tracking as expected. Expenses are lower, and this is mainly due to the Economic Development Division. The studies were budgeted this year. They just haven't been done yet. I think we had one done, and then there's more to be done later. So if those come in, we'll see the expenses pop up. So how does that translate to the balance sheets? We're doing pretty well. So the end of last year, we were at net assets of $250 million. 6 months later, we're about $2.5 million stronger on our balance sheet. And then where are our investments held? We have $11.5 million in these federal securities, earning an average of 1.7%, and these are anywhere between 1 and 5 year investments. The balance of our invested cash is in the local government investment pool, and that's earning today about 2.5%. But I expect that 2.5% to decrease pretty quickly because the pool is sensitive to market changes. And as we see the interest rates decrease, we'll get lower interest rates here. I wanted to mention capital spending. Year to date, well, through July, we've spent about $4.2 million, and these, I just listed a few of the bigger projects. I wanted to explain why we have such a big cash balance, $39 million in the LGIP. That's because we've only spent 4.2 through July, and we still have 28 million slated for projects for 2019. So the 39 million in the bank, 28 of that is already earmarked.
That was looking so good.
Just a little reality check. So that's it for the financial results. Are there any questions on those before I move on? Okay, great. So our safety report, we had 2 minor injuries, no lost work dates, and no recordable incident rates. The stormwater program at the airport, the sample results are within permit limits. And at the shipping terminal, there were 2 locations that exceeded the copper limits, and the required responses have been completed there. Risk management activities. The only major incident we had was that fire suppression system water line break at the airport. Nothing since that. Open claims for the port. That March 2016 windstorm is still on the books, waiting to be repaired. And our insurance carrier did make a preliminary partial payment in April of 2017, and we're still in conversation with them for the additional costs as they come in. Claims against the port, we just have one that's open, and that was in January of last year, slip and fall at the Sawtooth. So we're still vetting that one through our insurance carrier. And then public disclosure, commission asked for public disclosure requests. Year-to-date, 70. Staff time, it's taken under 65 hours to complete those requests. And year-to-date, only $2,800 has cost the port in direct costs. I wanted to compare last year. So last year, January through June, we had 80 requests, taking up 141 hours of staff time and $10,000 worth of costs. And a lot of those costs are legal costs. So these are minor requests compared to last year. And that's it, if there aren't any questions or additional comments.
Commissioner Bell.
It's unusual to not have, during an election year, more public disclosure requests.
Yeah,
Have
we're
them
just,
actually go down during an election year. That's unusual.
we're not seeing them. And I kind of looked through
Who's
the-
getting elected?
I'd say his name, but it would be free public.
Darn, thought
Publicity.
you were gonna.
Yeah, so that's good news, actually.
Yeah, good, okay.
No,
Have any of those gone down? Wasn't there some effort to modernize some of the access at the
Yes.
airport?
Yep.
For those really serial recurrent requesters? Did that happen?
It did happen, and thank you for bringing that up. It's called WebLink. It is through a portal in our website. We just have to populate that portal with documents that are requested, and the airport started doing that, and they're getting less of those requests. They can just point the customer to our website, and they're able to get those themselves. So the more we can populate that web link with the documents that are being requested,
Yeah.
it'll be better. Yeah.
Seems like we can already see the difference.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
That's it for me.
None for me.
Very good job as usual, thank you.
Even though there was no joke.
Kind of, what happened
We're
with the
just gonna let
joke
that
thing,
slide today.
So at this time, we're going to recess the public meeting and open a public hearing of intent to surplus the former Humane Society building.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Noah Carlson, Property Manager for the Port of Bellingham. The purpose for this public hearing is to discuss the surplus of 3710 Williamson Way, which is the former Humane Society building. The 3,768 square foot building was constructed in 1980 and was occupied by the Humane Society until 2013, and it remained vacant until 2017. The Puget Hound LLC, now assigned to Rover Stay Over Inc., entered into a lease agreement in June of 2017. And their lease agreement does offer the option to purchase, subject to the Port Commission's approval of the surplus sale and subsequently amending the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. So we would like to move forward with this action at the next commission meeting on September 17th to surplus that building. We have opened this up for public comments and would like to do so now if the commissioners don't have any questions.
Commissioner Shepherd.
Are we surplusing just the building or the land as well?
Just the building.
Okay. And what size parcel is it on? It's a 3,000 square foot?
Well, the lease agreement, it's about approximately 25,000 square feet for their land lease at the moment. They have a bit more than that. I don't have that exact number.
Can you bring that up on Google so we can take a look at the building?
Sure.
And what's the name of they changed their name, right?
The lease is with Rover Stay Over Inc.,
Rover Stay
but they do business as Rover Stay Over.
Over.
Roll over, now it's Rover Stay Over.
But they are
Progressing.
continuing to do business as the Puget Hound. So here is the building. Their leased premises is approximately 25,000 square feet.
And they've been in business for 2 years now or 3?
Since June of 2017. It has been assigned over to a new entity.
Yeah. So that new entity, is any old people involved in the new entity, the other people, or is it different?
It's a different, I don't know if you're familiar with, well, it's Rover Stay over on Hannigan Road. They have an existing business over in Linden
Okay.
and have been operating for several years.
Okay. Any more questions? Commissioner
I'd
Bell?
like to see if anybody else has comments before I ask any more questions. Is there anybody that wants to speak to this? No?
Anybody?
And to be clear, Commissioners, this is both a hearing, it's a hearing on amending the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements to delete this building and the surplusing. So both notices are the same notice in the paper. So if anybody wants to speak to the comp plan or surplus, then they can.
Seeing none.
Seeing none.
And it was a right of first refusal to buy the building?
Excuse me?
The right of first refusal on the purchase of the building, correct?
Yes.
So is there going to be is it going to go to bid, or is it just?
We're
surprise?
just offering it to Rover Stay Over at this point, and that is partially because when they entered into their lease agreement, the state of the building was in pretty rough shape. In fact, before they went into the lease agreement, it was scheduled to be demolished.
Any further questions, Commissioner?
No, I don't have a real big problem with that. I just think there's some transparency issues maybe with that valuation. But if it was valued at zero, basically, for our standpoint, right, we're happy with it. Okay, I'm
I
good.
think it was valued negative dollars to us because we would have had to tear it down.
We had to tear it down. That's what we looked at the time and said, okay, we could tear it down. These guys approached us to lease it, so, and they put a bunch of improvements in it. They want to put more in it, but they don't want to do it for our building.
I just had to, I think out loud, so I had to think it through. So that's good. Thanks.
Further?
Nope.
Much.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing on the intent to surplus the former Humane Society building and reconvene the public meeting.
Authorize Executive Director to approve funding of the Farming for Life Center located at the Northwest Fairgrounds in the city of Linden.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Don Goldberg, Director of Economic Development. Carrie, I don't see the PowerPoint presentation up here.
It's in the commission meeting folder.
Thank you.
You found the razor.
Okay, I'm there. Good afternoon again. So got to get on target here. This afternoon, we're here to we'll have a great opportunity. Traditionally, the port grants $100,000 per year to the small cities, the 6 small cities in our county. And in 2019, Director Fix and myself went to all the small cities to see if they would cooperate in us moving those funds to the Berry Lab in the Farming for Life Center. And so we're lucky today to have Brad Rader, who is a large part of that, to come describe what that center is and talk a little bit more about the viability and importance of agriculture in our region. So Brad, come on up. You can just go this way. Okay.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate the time, opportunity to be here to talk a little bit about this farm pavilion in Linden. For those of you that made the North Washington Fair here just recently, you've seen, or even been on Main Street in Linden, you've seen a new project that was delayed by a month in February due to our freeze, but it ended up getting done for the fair. So we have a fantastic new facility. Really excited for the potential, and that's why I'm here. The building is constructed on the fairgrounds property, and it's been a dream of many of us farmers for a long time to be able to have a place where we can tell the story of farming. And for those of you that travel the county and have been here for a long time, you know the impact. And I think that's important to note. I mean, that first slide, it has three of the main crops, seed potatoes, dairy, and berries. And just to talk a little bit about those three, and of course there's many others too. Forestry, there's of course there's some fishing and others, but us that have tractors and do these things, we think about those three. So seed potatoes, 2,500 acres of potatoes locally grown that go all over western United States. A lot of them to Skagit. Dairies, 36 to 38,000 head of cows locally that produce a lot of milk that's powdered there in Linden. And berries, we have about 9,000 acres of raspberries and about 9,000 acres of blueberries now that are all machine harvested. And I think that, the raspberry crop is one of the important ones. I mean, they all, as far as they rank in the pounds produced in the United States, raspberries top production, about 85% of the processed raspberries grown in the United States. So just to highlight a few of those different crops, that all together, you look at the jobs created, you look at the dollars created locally, it's impactful. And we're talking, 3,000 to 5,000 jobs. I mean, our operation alone, we send out 500 to 600 W-2s, and when you look at all the berry farms together hiring 14 to 16-year-olds through getting a state variance, also college students from Whatcom and Western, it's impactful. And it's impactful dollars to these small communities. It's also impactful to teach them where their food comes from, which I think is a major issue in our world today, that our food supply is so abundant, and I won't get on a tear with this one, but our food supply is just there and we go get it and it's pretty affordable and we kind of forget. And so this facility is going to give us the platform to tell that story. Also, it gives us a platform to have Washington State University there and a home for them. Right now they're in Skagit and they do a really nice job commuting back and forth, but we grow different crops than they do in Skagit, and we want to have a home for them to be able to do their research locally. And so we've talked about this idea of the berry lab, but also it's going to be used for dairy and seed potatoes, and just having those folks here, those PhDs, having part of their time, part of their week spent in Linden, and it's in. I don't have the right slide that shows the actual layout of the building. I apologize for that, but the building is split up into a few different areas, and it will give us a really great opportunity to be able to conduct their research. Our farm, we moved from Puyallup Valley up here to Linden in the late 80s. Our research is still done a lot in Puyallup for raspberries. It needs to be up here. And so this is the facility. This is a rendering, but believe it or not, it turned out to be almost exactly like that. And we're excited. Excel Construction did a great job to put this together in a timely manner. And we have it, we started fundraising a couple of years ago, and we're almost there. We almost have it funded for the building. We still have some work to do to close the gap on that, and then the goal will be to have the exhibits and the rest of the offices for WSU done by the fair of 2020. So that's why I just got done with harvest, and now we're starting on this project to get this done for the fair of next year. I want to be cognizant of my time too, so just throw up your hand if you want me to stop. So this is a video, and I think I'm just going to skip through that. This is the exhibit space in the middle of the facility, and this PowerPoint came from a gentleman that's helping us. He actually has done a lot of projects, just to name a few. He's worked on part of the Statue of Liberty in their interpretive center. He's done some work for Disney Olympics. He was recommended through a friend from Linden that has grew up as a farming guy and has worked outside of the state for years and is back and retired. And it's been unbelievable working with him. And now we just need to figure out how to pay for this. But our idea is to bring folks in from Vancouver to, let's say, Tacoma and show them what it takes, not only just in Whatcom County, but Skagit and the Northwest beyond. Let's figure out how to put them into a processing plant when they're sitting in a room like this and show them how berries and peas and corn get to the store, whether they're fresh or frozen. So, and those exhibits can be kind of changed out, but this gives you a little glimpse of what's going to be inside. And this is the entry area. I'm just going to kind of flip through these. There's some interpretive, with videos that can be switched in and out. This is as they go in. I wish David was here to kind of walk through. I mean, we're going to talk about 4-H and FFA and the importance of those. There's these story pods he talks about, and talk about the history of Washington, but also the Ag College, Washington State. Innovations, just how we've gotten to where we are, how we've got a number of robotic milkers going into the county now. Machine harvesting since the 70s, and if we weren't using machines, we would not be in business. And so talking about those different pieces and parts of what we do and what's next and how we're going to get there, because we all know things are going to continue to change. So, faces and facets of farming, jobs, trying to get folks to interact with what we're doing as well, what farming brings to the community and to people that aren't in the actual ag community. So you can see we've kind of got this set up for folks and different companies to be able to put their names around, trying to figure out how to bring in the finances for this. But there's lots of different ideas on how we tour ag barns, and the video would be pretty cool to show at some point down the road for those of you who want to see it. He's got some real interesting 3D things that really make it come to life. So the guy that gave us this, David's name, was actually in greenhouses, and so we're trying to bring a greenhouse in to either the outside or the inside of the building somehow, and that's what this aquaponics and other types of growing that we're going to look at. Here's the berry and seed potato section. So it explains a little bit about the current crops and machine harvesting, and we can't get everybody out to our farms to see everything, which I wish we could, but maybe we can do some tours and some videos and things to try to connect people, because for those of you that haven't seen it, it'll blow you away. So, and the same thing with potatoes and the dairies. Any questions? I'm moving pretty quick, but I hope that it's connecting. This is, once again, quite a bit about the exhibits in the middle, and this is actually a very good drawing of what the inside of the building, the middle section, looks like. And then the outside two wings are where we're going to have a kitchen, where it'll be, I guess it would be a learning kitchen where people could come in and teach classes on cooking that will bring food from the local areas. And we had Kathy Casey up this year for a raspberry tour, and I know she would be excited to get involved in cooking raspberry things and different recipes inside of that kitchen. Across from that, on the other side of the exhibits, will be the WSU area. We're currently working on the lease, what that looks like with them and what that's going to look like. We have some funding set aside for, they need a cooler and a freezer inside. Of course, they need equipment, they need desks, some office space, and also there will be some viewing windows so the people that are going through the exhibits can see the work that's being done inside there in the WSU lab. So I hope I've given you a little bit of a glimpse of the importance of agriculture in this county, which I can't say enough. It's a $1 billion crop when you look at everything together. A crop as in multiple different facets. and, a lot of different jobs. We want to tell the story of not just agriculture in the county, which is extremely important, also in Skagit, but then the Northwest, beyond, and all those connecting parts. And this will help us do it. We feel like with your help, we can make this project something that we can all be proud of.
Well, Brad, I'd like to say I think this is great. I listened to you at the EDI meeting, and I think what you folks are doing is absolutely necessary. We need to educate the people of the Northwest on where their food does come from. It just doesn't show up in the freezer section or in the produce section. There's a lot that goes into it to get it there. And I think that young people that don't farm, that are introduced to that, may enjoy farming, and then that might become their livelihood. I think it's a great tribute to the Northwest farming, and thank you for doing it. Commissioner Bell.
A couple quick questions. You said we had 36 to 38,000 head of cow. How many did we have 20 years ago? Are we down?
Well, I know when we moved here in the late 80s, the dairy number was close to 400, and now it's about 80. I think the cows has declined a bit, but what we've seen is a few farmers have gotten bigger. So our numbers have stayed fairly, once again, not a dairy farmer, but I hang out with them all the time. So I think that we're pretty close as far as those numbers. It's not like we went from 80,000 to 36.
Careful, those dairy farmers can be a bad influence.
Well, we're all hanging out together a lot because we got to stick together. So
on that, I think one of the things that I'm most impressed with is the value of work, and that's lost in this. The number of kids that you bring through there that learn not just how food is produced, but how to work and how to actually have a job and keep it, how to show up on time, and what real work means. I mean, that's invaluable to the future of not only us, but the future of our country. Love the idea that you're doing the research here. We'd like to figure out how to help you with that. We're all about looking forward and how we can figure out how we can do things better moving forward. And then last but not least, my entrepreneur head says, how do we monetize this thing? And I'm just thinking, where's the markets, Edeline ought to have a dairy store. Outside of that, selling and the proceeds go back in, there ought to be something. And I don't want to be, I'm new to this, so don't let me look at that. But I just see great ways to monetize this somewhere down the road other than advertising.
all those ideas have been explored, and
sure.
we're taking a close look at them. Because, yeah, it has to be able to sustain itself without just having me come down here every year and sit in the audience and try to ask for more money. I mean, we've got to figure out how it's going to pay.
Got it. And then the last thing is, what about greenhouses and Christmas trees? Are they going to be represented too? Because that's a big part. I know Smith Garden's got a huge presence, and
yeah, we
sell a lot of Christmas trees.
Right. I think that's what I tried to put us all together, because we're all working together on those things. And there's a few, that stick out when you look at the numbers, but we can't leave anybody out. But we got to keep moving forward. So we'll doing our best with a limited crew to get the word out.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Yeah. But if I don't want to take too much more time, but
You're fine.
the people that come through that work for us, and everybody has been blessed with this too. But for instance, this year, there was a gentleman, I don't know where, I think he lived in Seattle, but he drove a truck for us. One of the roundabouts on the East Badger Road went around too fast, dumped some flats, raspberries everywhere. I showed up to help, and I think he'll always remember that, because there was $5,000-6,000 worth of raspberries on the ground, and he was impacted, and I know the rest of the team was too, and people driving by, because we do this for 5 weeks, and there's multiple hours of work laying there. And I'm not trying to tell a bad story, but I'm just saying that any of that work, those connections that you can make with agriculture and where your food comes from, I think he's going to tell his grandkids about that, and his kids too. So those types of things are fun to see, and those get left out. And I just want to see local agriculture in the U.S. I don't want to see all of our food coming from offshore. I don't. it needs to come, a lot of it from here, and I hope we can, I love the grocery store with all the fresh stuff, but, you know, our grocery store didn't look like that when I was a kid. So it's exciting, but we need to also remember, we produce a lot of food here locally too, and the United States is a awesome place to grow things.
Yeah, I'm on your page, and just so you know, you're the only item on the agenda right now, so you can take as much time as you want.
Well, I'm gonna put everybody to sleep pretty soon, so.
We'll wake them up, don't worry.
All right. Well, I can talk for hours, so give me some water, I'll keep going.
I've just got a couple questions. For, the building is available when people go to the fair. Is this also publicly available throughout the rest of the year? Or how do people use this and go and know how to get there?
So as you know, the fair can be, the expo building can be rented for different companies to have parties, and I was kind of joking, but thank you. So the fair facing, I guess it would be the south facing portion of that building. There's a big section there that we can pull in tractors and combines and different things in that area. They also can be removed, and that can be a section for different parties or rented for space. There's also on the wings that are to the south of where WSU, I'm sorry I don't have the drawing, I should have brought that, but where the WSU and where the kitchen, those are areas where we could do teaching. There will be wings where they could be divided out. And then, you know, they could be, I don't know what kind of classes would take place there. I know that WSU does some teaching in facilities potentially like this. And wouldn't that be cool to be, you know, like in the Puyallup extension, I guess, facility, they do some teaching there, some degrees, even in nursing. I think they're done on TV like this, but why couldn't that be done there? And I mean, I'm sure folks from Western and Whatcom might not want to, I don't know how that competes, but hey, you know, it might be something that can, whether it's special classes or additions for degrees, other things, I don't really know. I mean, we can only supply the facility and kind of let it happen.
And the exhibit space, is that open all year, or is that only open during the fair?
No. And I should have said that. That's a good question.
That was kind of most of
No,
my
that's a
question.
great question. It's going to be open all year round. I mean, and this is just so everybody knows, there are many of these facilities popping up around the United States because I think there's folks like us that are worried and want to reconnect people. At one time, we all came from families that farmed. I mean, or did something with agriculture. And there's one in Wisconsin that's much larger than this. There's a Sage Center down in Boardman, Oregon, right along the freeway on I-84. And those are open all year round, and that's the plan for this one as well. I mean, we're talking, you know, it's got to be open 6 to 7 days a week and certain hours. And then we're going to have to work and partner on how do we get people, how do we advertise, you know, and that'll be an interesting challenge because, and then how do we refresh it? There's some challenges ahead, and we'll need some smart people to get that figured out. And, you know, we've already got, the Farming for Life exhibit has been around for a long time. It's been in a tent at the fair. For those, it's been in a facility about this size for many years. And our plan is, and the dream of folks before me, you know, let's blow that up. Let's get a building for it. Let's tell that story in a much bigger way. So, you know, those ideas are already started. It's just a matter of getting those folks together and go, hey, we got the budget. Let's make it work. And then, of course, we brought in some experts that can really help with that.
Well, great. Well, I know, you know, one thing about Whatcom County is we have a strong ethic around buying local. You know, we see it in campaigns that are proactively put on by organizations like Sustainable Connections and others, and there's the farm tour and other good activities to really connect that facility with. So I do think there's a strong appetite here in the county for this type of connection that you're describing.
Well, we've had a lot of local participation in funding it too, and that's fun to see. And got a ways to go, but we're pretty confident we're going to be able to get that done.
So just one more question on the Berry Lab. What do you see as a outcome of the work of WSU on berries? And I know they've been involved in apple designing the best apple crops for harvest and for production here in Washington State. They work in Skagit County with grains, particularly for bread and other products. What are you hoping comes out of this?
Well, many different things. I mean, you reference apples. For those of us that eat apples often, you probably had a Honeycrisp apple. In the next few years, you're going to end up having a Cosmic Crisp apple, which is being planted. It's being planted abundantly in eastern Washington. I mean, I think they're running out of plants. So that has changed the entire market. So could we see if we get the right plant breeder, which we need, that's a whole nother conversation. Our plant breeder for raspberries is about ready to retire. We have this Meeker variety that's been around since, I think, 54. It's tired. We need a new one. Right now, we have some great private varieties, but we also need some great public varieties. And private varieties cost, and public varieties don't cost as much. And so could we get a raspberry variety that we don't have to replant every 5 to 7 years? Could it yield twice as much so we can stay up with the rising minimum wage? There's a lot of different things to think about when it comes to, what could the right package look like when we see that? Could they work? Right now, they're on most of our farms. They're on our farms weekly doing research, but they're driving back and forth between Skagit and Linden. And so, how does that change the game a little bit when they have some office space here or lab space? I see what they've done, and I think we have I see what they've done with the apples, I guess is what I'm saying, and we don't have near as much cash as those guys do, but we put together a plan to try to keep our plant breeding position. We did an endowment with Washington State. It's kind of tied in with this, but because the president of Washington State was here and said, hey, we'll be there if you guys will invest in the plant breeding position. So we kind of put a deal together on that. And so far it's going well, but that's coming out of the raspberry grower's pocket, the endowment. But I think I'm worried if we don't do this, what will happen, to be honest with you. I think, stretching the folks between Skagit and here long-term, is that viable? It's working, but is Puyallup going to be viable long-term? Right now, farming is a little bit of a challenge there. There's still some good farmers there, but it's a bit of a challenge. And, the climate's different between Puyallup and Linden. So we need them to be here so they can focus on what we're doing. Specifically about raspberries, that would be my answer.
Okay, great.
And I think dairy, they need everything going for them they can. And if we could get, I don't understand how that all comes together with Washington State, but I feel like whether it's corn, silage, whatever that looks like, if they could get a boost in certain research by this facility, it seems like it would help.
Commissioner Bell, you said you had one more question?
I'm gonna get some numbers. You're asking for 100. So what was the total overall cost that you expected to raise? How much have you gotten? How far will this go towards filling the hole, and what will you have left? And
So the facility cost came in around $5 million, and we're running 4.4 put together. When we look at all of our different pieces and parts, it's not all in the bank yet, to be totally frank, but.
you've got commitments for about 4.5.
And then when we look at the exhibit piece, not that you asked about that, but that exhibit piece is is, 1.5 to $2 million, that middle section. Okay.
The 5.
And that's the next challenge ahead of us. And that's the goal, to have that done by next fair.
And then on top of that, you've got ongoing operations. And so there's got to be a nut that you've got to hit every year. Again, so you're.
To keep the lights on, for sure.
Keep the lights on, right?
Yeah.
Have you estimated what that is?
No. I think Jim Barron, our fair manager, has done some work on that, and, to get how many people we have to get through at what rate to pay for that, or do we do that through, there's an auction every year, and is there an arm of that could be used? There's definite, and I could definitely send some more detail around that if necessary.
No, I want to make sure we're helping.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any further questions?
And just for Don, to clarify for the request on this is funds that normally go out to the small cities, and the small cities have requested, in the past, this has been done with small grants to the small cities, and instead there was a request to lump this together for a bigger impact for a dedicated purpose. Am I understanding that right?
Correct. And then the intention is to go back to some form of small city grant in 2020. Rob will be going to the small city meeting this month to discuss what that will look like.
Okay.
17th, 9 to 11. No.
So I understand the Cosmic Crisp will be out this spring. You said a couple of years, but I heard spring, so.
All the time.
All
Those
coups
are
all
what
the time.
apples that went up in the shuttle and came back, or what?
That's the only thing I misstated. So.
Hopefully it's this spring. I'm looking forward to trying them.
Well, I got a box of it about 2 years ago, so it's out there. It's just gonna be slow, but it's supposed to be a game changer.
Yep.
You cut it, leave it on the counter for a long time, and it's not supposed to brown, and I mean, it's amazing. And the new plant breeder from WSU was a big part of putting that together.
So, thank you, Brad. We won't grill you any longer, but
No,
I do
hey,
have.
bring it on. It's important. I understand it's a lot of money coming from the cities, and I just hope that we can all see the importance of ag. And
Well, I'm not sure we're doing enough, is what my comment was. The port's supposed to be the spearhead economic development, and when I ran for office in 2015, I was in East County a lot, and the question out in East County was, well, what's the port doing for us? Well, here's something we can do for them, and I'm not sure what we're giving is enough, and I'm thinking that maybe we should discuss doing more than what we are doing to help.
So Commissioners, what I would recommend we do here, because we did find this source of funding from the small cities, and that one is tapped out. Brad mentioned some ongoing operating costs, so maybe Brad and I can sit down and see if we can't help there.
Okay, all right. I'd like to see us do more if we can.
Okay, fair enough.
Are we agreed on that?
I think it's a good point. I spent a lot of time going to various farms, and people were very appreciative that I came out and took the time, and also relayed a similar message that you're here from the port. What are you doing outside of a marina or airport?
Right, yeah,
And-
doesn't the city of Bellingham own the port of Bellingham? That's the question I always got,
Yeah,
so.
and I do, we know it's an important part of our economy. We know it's important part of our culture here as a community. And so I do want to see us thinking actively about ways that we can support the future of this industry, because I think we're all in agreement that it's not something we want to see disappear. So, and it's just not something the port has substantially engaged in the past. We've done some smaller targeted things, but this is a particular sector that we have not allocated as much time and resources to.
So,
I think that, Whatcom is different than Skagit, and I think most people you would ask would say that Skagit probably does a lot more dollars than what Whatcom does agriculturally, and that's not right. Skagit's awesome, but I-5 goes right through the middle of it. I mean, my wife has does not like it when we drive through there because I'm always looking at what the tractors are doing and other things. And it's the same thing for everyone. I mean, I think it goes right through the middle where here, you know, I-5 kind of takes a turn and you don't see all of it. And a lot of it's where you guys said. And between the berries and the dairy, you know, we pump a lot of dollars out of here. And it's impactful. And so, you know, I'd love to meet with you, Rob, and talk a little bit more about trying to make this thing go. Because the last thing we want to do is build it and then, you know, have it not be taken care of or something that we didn't fit into, you know, or didn't figure out. But I know that like the Sage Center in Boardman, there's, I think that's the Port of Morrow. There's a big tie between the Sage Center and the Port of Morrow. So I think we talked about that. But yeah, I'm excited about it and wouldn't be here if I wasn't. And you know, there's only one farmer here, but on behalf of all of us, I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, I think they sent the right man.
Well,
I'm going to speak in favor of what he said as well, and I just want you to know that I think there's a big deal for us to help you. I don't want to see you get part of the way there and not finish it. I don't want to see you get 5 years into this and not have operating funds. So we want to stay engaged. This is not just a one-time hit and leave us and go home. We want to stay involved in this as long as we can, and if you have difficulties with some of those operating funds, we want to talk to you about that. I'm honestly a believer that we'd have fewer people up here on Holly Street if we spend more people spending their time in your fields in Linden. So it is an economic development issue as far as I'm concerned, and a workforce issue. So don't hesitate when you talk to him to talk about what you need. Lay yourself bare and let's figure out how we can make this thing successful. Your farm's successful, not just the exhibit.
Okay, any more questions, gentlemen? With that, Carrie, if you please.
Sure. Authorize the executive director to approve funding of the Farming for Life Center located at the Northwest Fairgrounds in the city of Linden.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepherd?
Aye.
Commissioner Briscoe's aye, carries 3-0. Thank you, Brad, for coming this evening.
We'll see you again.
So that, gentlemen, we're on to other business. Oh, do we have? Oh, that's right, I forgot. Oh, it is 5:30. That went faster than that. So we have no public comment at 5:30 because there is no public to comment.
Your comment about the Cougs again.
So other business, Commissioner Bell.
Yeah, I have some. I just need to find my notes.
Okay, Commissioner Shepherd.
Yeah, I've just got two items. The first is I really want to appreciate all the work that's gone into getting this pump track at the waterfront. I've got to give a special call out to our executive director, Fix, and the rest of the staff that has really been involved in this. Everything from thinking it through and designing it to holding a hose with some water and spraying the thing down. I've seen a ton of people out there, including myself and my kids. It is more fun than I really expected. I got to really have a good time going out on it. My kids have not stopped talking about it every day. So I'm here tonight, but I will probably be at the pump track tomorrow with them. Otherwise, I would probably be at the pump track with them right now. It's a really nice feature, and it's just part of activating an important asset for us. So everything we do down there to create use and activity goes to making that a vibrant and accessible and exciting place for our community. So it's a really nice feature, and we're going to continue to see lots and lots of traction there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, Mike Hogan, Greg Nickel, Alex Hildreth, all key players in the pump track, working a lot of different hours, spent a lot of time out there this weekend, so big thanks to them.
Yeah, good. Any other updates for us on the pump track where we're on the topic? It's, you want to tell us the hours it's open so everyone knows?
Yeah, it's open during daylight hours. It's not open during dusk. It's not lit, so it's very dangerous at night. We ask you to respect the rules on it. We're going to get some better signage up. There's some small signs out there now. It's bikes only and no electric bikes. Otherwise, just have fun and look out for everyone and don't run into people. Yesterday, there was an incredible amount of people. I think at one point about 75 people on the pump track, and it went really smoothly, and everyone was behaved very well. So if we keep that up, it'll be a great experience for everybody.
Yeah, it's a large pump track, biggest in the county, and it's got a lot of room for people to kind of do different circuits and loops and keep themselves moving while still absorbing a lot of people on there.
And we're going to start calling it a bike park because it's bigger than a pump track. So we're going to figure out a catchy name that includes bike park. And we have a grand opening party on the 28th of September, which is a Saturday. So come on down. I think we're going to have a beer garden, some food trucks down there, and possibly a DJ and a lot of bikers. So bring your bike and come on down on the 28th.
Okay, well, I hope it translates into more permanent installations of food and beverage down there, along with some potential for venue space for other activities. I think it's really seeding a good future for that part of our community. Well, great. My other is just I wanted to give an update mostly for you guys. I've been participating in this homeless strategies committee for the county for the last, I think we've been meeting since May. We were originally chartered by the county council to meet to look at severe weather sheltering and to try and fill in the gaps that were not well executed last year. And so I was asked to participate by the county council, and there's been representation from City of Bellingham, small cities, the county, faith groups, nonprofits, trying to bring as many folks to the table to address this challenge as we can. And it's been useful. It hasn't produced tons of new solutions to a very challenging project, but it's been brought a lot of people together and helped to, I think, push players like the city to take charge, and they're going to open a winter shelter throughout the most in-need months over the winter, which will help fill a gap. Fountain Community Church was providing that same sort of facility last year. For a variety of their own reasons, they're not going to be doing that to the same capacity this year. And so the city is really just trying to make up for that loss. And I think all the other players have been talking about ways that they can participate, whether that's the Homes Now people and some of the tiny home work, or that's some of the expansions hopefully we see at the Lighthouse Mission and elsewhere. But it's winter is coming, and the group continues to meet. We've transitioned from meeting just looking at severe weather sheltering needs to looking at sheltering needs as a whole. So we're going to continue. One thing that Director Fix and I have talked a lot about is use of port properties for severe weather sheltering. And really the only one we have that we've identified as potential is the Air National Guard building. It's a facility that is unused. It's heated all year round. We were there in the dead of winter, and it was warm and dry. It has plumbing and bathrooms, and it's something that is not in use. And we are under some FAA regulations about the type of use we can have near the airport. We can't have permanent sheltering. We can't have permanent use of that facility, but it is something that we could activate if there was a severe need. So we've been in conversation about, is that the right thing? And I just wanted to bring it to your both attention to make sure you were aware and to see if you had any questions or comments for me.
I just have a question for Frank, is that we can do that legally?
Make available the Air National Guard facility on a temporary basis.
Yeah.
The port probably cannot do it itself legally. It's going to be difficult for the port to do those kind of things in its mission. But certainly the port could partner with another government that could do it. So
Yeah,
on
and,
a temporary basis, a permanent basis is going to be much more difficult.
yeah.
You can't do it permanent because
No,
of the FAA.
No, and it's a really important point is, one thing, you know, I've made clear to the group is we potentially have a space, but we don't have operating funds that come with it, the staffing that comes with it. And those are contracts that they hope to be in place for any of those partner agencies that would participate. So it's a good point.
And not only that, we have kind of somewhat of a statutory restriction, being a special purpose government that limits things we can do. Now, I think on a temporary basis, and I would defer to Sunil Harmon on the FAA issues, you probably could partner with another, like the city or the county that does have statutory authority, but
Correct.
only on a temporary basis.
Yeah.
I would think.
So we could partner with the county and
And that's the next step on this, is I'm going to get together with Tyler Schroeder of the county, and we're going to talk about the details and tour the building and what needs to be done and what the port's going to do and what the county's going to do, and if there's a in-between agency in there. So thank you for bringing that up, but I'll report back after I meet with Tyler.
Okay.
good.
My hope is we don't need severe weather shelters in the future, that we get to the capacity that is sufficient to meet everyone's needs so that everybody in Whatcom County has a place that they can ride out bad weather and have a home. We're not there. We're not going to be there for some years. And so I think we will continue to see needs for a variety of sheltering opportunities, and hopefully we put in enough planning and forethought that we're not scrambling as much as we have in the past years.
How many people do you think we could house there?
I think we've talked about at least 100 people could probably fit with the facility. It's sizable, and it's really mostly unused.
Right.
Civil Air Patrol is in a little piece. There's a little bit of storage. But,
Okay.
yeah, the heat's on.
Sounds good.
So, thank you. That's it for me.
Did you find your notes,
Yeah, I did.
sir?
Are you sure
Commissioner Bell, if you would.
you ready for this?
Probably not, but we're going to go ahead anyways.
Do is revisit the petty cash issue that was on the consent agenda.
The what?
Petty cash, I'm kidding. Rob, I was gonna pull the petty cash from the, to mess with. The first thing I want to talk about is something I think is pretty important for us to consider from a governance standpoint. A lot of what I'm going to talk about with you guys today is governance. I think we need to put in a succession plan in case our executive director gets on the bike track and breaks his neck or something like that. But
Gwen said she'd step in. I heard her say it at the Airfest. So.
We just went through with WPPA, going through a succession plan with the executive director there because he resigned. And it's just important that there is a policy and a way that we handle that. And I think that we as a commission have an obligation to figure out how we're going to do that before the event hits us. Because after the fact is not when we want to be thinking about this. So it really is about how do we go about looking for some of the key positions that we have, primarily the executive director, and go through that selection process before we're faced with that issue. And what does that process look like? Because what I've seen is typically you've got people on the inside who think that they're going to automatically assume that role. You've got some people on the outside who want that role, who want to come in. So there's going to have to be an organized process for how that occurs. And I think we ought to at least take a look at how we do that. What do we want to do in the event that we lose our executive director at some point? What does that process look like to us? And what do we want to see it going forward in case it happens on our watch so that we're prepared for it? In the event that it does happen, we'd be sitting here looking at each other. We'd have to appoint an interim, which is all part of that process. Then we'd have to go out and figure out how are we gonna go about this. So I think it's probably better to do that when we're not faced with it so that everybody in the system internally and externally understands what that looks like. And I would like to begin that process so that we have an organized system in the event that we do lose.
Well, I was under the understanding the executive secretary took care of that.
She just tells us who she wants. And I just think it's a wise thing because I did see some political angst, quite frankly, at WPPA, because there were a couple of people who thought they just automatically were going to get it when the resignation came. And it wasn't necessarily the best fit. but it became politically difficult to not pick that person from the inside because of the way it was set up. And I think that we owe the community, and I think we owe the port the best possible candidate we can put in there. And that involves an outside search. It involves a number of different things. That doesn't mean somebody from the inside can't apply. But I do think it involves more than just the assumption that it's going to fill itself. And we need to be proactive in that. So I'd like to get started on a succession plan if we can. So that's item number one.
Would you like port staff to take a shot at kind of an outline as to what that could look like and bring it to you so you guys can discuss it? And we'll give you a couple different options and what other ports have done.
I'm good with that.
All right, cool.
Yeah, and just maybe some notes on how this has been done.
Yep.
And where it's been success, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something we don't know?
No.
No, it wasn't, it really
No,
did.
I know.
It really did come out of
It
it.
is, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's prudent.
I stayed away from the big jumps.
Yeah, but did you have your helmet on?
No, it really did come out of some of the political angst I saw coming from WPPA and a transition there. And there was also a discussion about it during that session. And I just think we need to be prepared. The second one is, I'm going to steal your thunder. No, I won't steal
My
your thunder.
thunder? I didn't know I had any thunder.
I did what I was supposed to do. You guys told me to go take a look at Walsh Marine, go talk to the boys out in Blaine. And after walking around Blaine, I had to go back a second time just to make sure that I understood exactly what I was seeing. And my impression is that we probably need to do more in Blaine than just what we're doing. I would love to see a master plan put together for the Blaine area, because I think putting a building in Walsh Marine or anywhere without putting the infrastructure in to make it successful is short-sighted. There's a lot of docks in disrepair. It doesn't look good to me, and it's not the way I want to leave Blaine when I leave this. I want to make sure that
It
we've
looks
got.
a lot better now.
I know, but we're kind of piecemealing it, right? And I'd love to see us do something better than that, because especially when I go to Walsh and you look at the building, and you look at how old the equipment is. To me, it needs more. You can't just put a great building in there and not take a look at the infrastructure that needs to go in alongside it, or the companies that are just around the corner from it that need to be built up as well. I would love to see a master plan put together for the entire area, and not just the businesses that we have. I would love to include Walsh Marine in that and see what equipment they need, what infrastructure improvements they need. But I think it's time. I think the last time we did a master plan as a port for the Blaine Marina was in the early 2000s, 2005 or so, mid-2000s. You know, we're almost 20 years away from 2000, or 10 years away from that, 15 years away from that study. Have some water. And I think it's time to maybe relook at it, because we've been through a crisis in the real estate industry. Things are taking off again. And I know we know what we don't want to do because we've done something with the waterfront down here. So we know we can take that and maybe do something really special out there and design that the way it's supposed to be. And if we want a boat repair place, which we do.
She's grinning.
Doing this for you.
Are you thinking
But-
just the Blaine Harbor?
I'm thinking there's so
or
much-
Are
so-
you thinking larger into the downtown
When you look at it,
section?
there's a lot going on. First of all, you've got a rail that goes through there. How does that play? You've also got the Semiahmoo Marina, which is right across the spit. You got a lot of growth over there. We've got a huge opportunity to have services for that. And if we do a boat repair business over there, I want to make it so that those people go there. I actually had a conversation with a Canadian who said he went all the way down to Colony because he didn't feel comfortable putting his boat in at Walsh, right? That shouldn't be. If you're coming down from Canada, that should be where we put that, right? And I know you're going to.
I didn't put him up to this.
You're going to school me on this, but I do think that what we need is a bigger plan. I think the Sawtooth, all of those docks look in disrepair. The whole place is not a place that I would be proud of walking away from if we didn't take an effort to make it better. And I think from an economic standpoint, Blaine is growing. I think it's an eyesore at some level. If we could make it look the way we wanted it to look, operate the way we wanted it to operate, I would love to see that. It involves all of the elements we've already discussed, funding all the things we want to discuss. But I feel uncomfortable piecemealing it, putting a building here, doing a repair there, because as you're doing one, something else is deteriorating, and there's a master plan that can be put in place that makes it look great. And that would be my goal for that area. So I wanted to bring that up. That's item number 2.
Can I answer some of those things?
Sure, that's what we're doing.
So the web locker that we're taking out of there had to come out of there because it's sinking.
Yeah.
It's in disrepair, and that's going to open up a lot of ground there so we can do different things. I think that was the first step to doing what you're describing. We're bound on the time thing by the bulkheads and in-water work and stuff like that, so that's got to be kind of piecemeal, so to speak. But I'm glad to hear you say the things you said. You've gone up there and looked, because it does have a lot of potential. It is an eyesore for the port. It was a long way from Bellingham, and it wasn't paid attention to for quite some time by the commission. I think the master plan, once we get to, if I'm sure they can correct me if I'm wrong, but once that web locker comes down, then we're going to sit down at the table and figure out what to do with that area. Am I correct? That's the plan?
That's correct.
Yes. So that part is in, and I think that may have been spoken to prior to you becoming a commissioner. I think we talked about that seriously. And we do need to figure out the space. And that equipment that's sitting in that web locker, it's old, but it's some of the best equipment you can get, and it needs a building to go in to be used so that it can repair vessels, so people will come there. And that's what I've been beating on the table about for a long time, is nobody wants to come to that yard because it doesn't have a building. There's no place for anybody to work on their stuff inside out of the weather. So folks like you're speaking to, even if they're putting their yacht up to work on a yard, they want to be able to go over to a building and work on polish something or fix something at a vise or do something, and that's not there. So it's been a big disadvantage for Mr. Walls.
So when you look around, you look at the boat lift, that's been there forever. All of that needs upgrading. I mean, if we're going to do this, we want to make sure that we've got the right equipment out there too. That generator looks like it's been there since World War II.
Which generator?
The generator, the boat lift, the motor on that boat lift. It could seize up at any moment from what I could tell.
Well,
But
yeah.
it's just not, it's not what you want to present. You don't want to have a great shiny new piece of building, right? And have that thing out there. So when we look at this, it needs to be a comprehensive thing. So somebody looks at that and says, wow, we really want to do that business here. And it includes some new equipment. It includes some new facilities. It includes something. It's a comprehensive thing. It's not just a shiny building with the same old equipment. Because that same old equipment's been there, it looks like, since World War II, honestly.
Well, I've been there that long.
There's a place in the dock, it looks like it was hit by a bomb in World War II. So I just really think that we need to have something, and it needs to be planned out, and we can do that in a couple of years. And quite frankly, this is, again, fits into that discussion for me about the port. If we do that and we do it well, we can time those construction efforts in a time when we need to put people to work. And it will be a very good outcome, and it will be exactly what we want to leave behind as a legacy. That's my sales pitch.
Good.
That's Blaine.
Great.
Anything from you?
I like it.
That's my phone.
I think we are replacing that marine railway as part of the cleanup.
Right,
That's
right.
going to
Yeah.
happen, so.
Yeah, but it
you
fits
know.
in there somewhere, right? What else can we do to that? And is there a way that functions? I don't know the answer to that, is because, the rail may have to go all the way through without stopping. But is there something we can do there? Is there a stop maybe for Amtrak? Or is there, what does that look like? And I don't know what the answer is. It may be no.
Amtrak won't stop there anymore. The people in Blaine, they've been trying to talk with the railroad. The railroad's, they're not going to do anything.
But there's a bigger plan.
Right.
And it involves all those. And Yemu as well, because the marina there is, they've asked us to take a look at it. We should take a look at it. We should take a look at the fueling systems. How does that all coordinate? That's my Blaine Marina.
So the equipment that's there, the boat lift,
Yeah.
it's okay. It needs paint and it needs to be serviced. Norm has been doing the best he can with what he has to work with. The Port of Bellingham kind of took it apart a few years back, several years back, and it really hasn't recovered since. The other folks that had it moved out, there was deals made, things were taken down, taken apart, and it's kind of why it is in some of the repair state it's in. I don't think you have to put as much money into equipment in that yard as you think you do. The stuff works good, it's not shiny, I'll give you that, but it can be painted, it can be cleaned up. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that could be done there we could help with maybe in that department. You know, I mean, we can talk about that, but I don't think it would be quite as expensive and take quite as long as you think to get some of that stuff back in order.
No, but it also fits into that, if we're going to talk about specifically Walsh, it fits into what's his long-range plan, and what's our long-range plan for the area. So it may or may not include him. It may include what do we want to see there, and what equipment needs to be there, what things need to be there. And quite frankly, a couple of those things that the boats were up on may have been sturdy, but they certainly didn't look it. I don't know that I would have put my boat up on them, right? So it's not, appearances mean something when you're going to come and have your boat serviced, especially when you've got an
That's why I was
expensive
trying to
boat.
get a building there and trying to get some of the stuff cleaned up, so.
So anyway, that's where I am today on Blaine.
That's how you get to,
So I don't know what that means for you, except we just threw a bunch of rocks in your backpack.
no, not really, we've been talking about this.
Yeah, it has been ongoing. And, you know, the course of Blaine, or at least the port property in Blaine, did change quite a bit after we hit about 2010. That 2005 or whatever era study that was almost a gentrification of Blaine. And the port took out for RFP to have people come in and do things like hotels and condos, and there were no biters, so no one came to the table to do anything. The industrial area has taken off, and employment's increasing out in that area, and the businesses seem to want more space. So I think the next step here is get the web locker down. We've got to get everyone moved out of there into the new web locker when it's done, which is spectacular, by the way. It's really well done. Yeah. The trail out there around it is really cool, and it's a nice project. So we get that web locker down, and then I think we have the planning session and talk about that ground. But let us catch our breath here with this web locker thing and get that going, because the fishermen are now coming back, and we can start getting that next step going.
Next item on the list, sir.
Well, I'm going to take your thunder. This is what I was going to say before, but don't want anybody to forget that we've got Sea Feast here in 2 weeks.
Sea Feast is on the 21st, Bike Park opening on the 28th.
The best festival.
Yep. Agreed. That's
I
it?
did that just to cut your knees out.
No, that's it? That's all you got?
Yep.
Okay, I got a few things. Do we need to take a break before are we okay, everybody okay? So Director Fix and I talked about this a little bit. The folks on Lummi Island, the Lummi Island Ferry group that takes care of the ferry, so to speak, and organizes things and what have you, have an issue with power. They'd like to go, they're in negotiations now to go to a hybrid ferry that's electric. It has some diesel engines for emergency purposes and charging when they have to, but they have a power problem on the island side for recharging the ferry. Spoke to Rob a little bit about this. He said we'd talk to PSE PUD. Yeah, and so I just wanted to bring you guys up to speed on that I have been contacted, and I did speak with Rob, and Rob said we could try and talk with folks and see if we could get something going. The folks on the island, when I called back, were fairly excited about that. I had also, when I was on the island at a meeting that they'd called me to over there, fiber optic was talked about. And so this would be Gina's department. There is a line going across there, and Rob says that is a private carrier that has that line, and we can't get access to that. My question would be to you, if in fact we can get some power across there and had to lay another line, can we put fiber down at the same time, to get across to the island so they have some service, or how would that play out?
So again, Gina Stark, Economic Development Project Manager. It depends, because the Lummies themselves, the Lummi Nation, the Economic Development Division is doing their own broadband feasibility study. So I have been working with them to kind of figure out, once they get their feasibility done, where their lines are and then kind of figuring out the gaps. So before I answer that question, I would want to talk to Teresa Taylor, who's heading up that project, because I do know for a fact there are gaps there, especially even all along the coastline, not just in the inners, but along the coastline, that there are fiber gaps as well. So I honestly don't know for sure, because you're also talking about it's tribal land, right, in the center. But along the coastlines, it's not. It's non-reservation. So it's a matter of, are we crossing through reservation land to get to the coastline? There's a lot of questions and variants, and without honestly having conversations and really looking to where we would be routing the fiber lines, I couldn't honestly answer that right at this point.
So maybe in your discussions, you could ask if there's, try and include Lummi Island somehow, with at least a hookup so we could put something across.
I think Steve Joke might understand that pretty well, whether you can combine fiber and power into, the same installation, because you're going undersea essentially.
Right.
But Gina brings up a good point. You're going to have to get the fiber and the power to that point, and to do that, you're going to go across the Lummi Reservation.
Right, so maybe that could be included in some of the conversations if we, so that it's not after the fact.
And I talk with Steve on a regular basis. In fact, I'm just having a conversation with him next week. So definitely we are in regular conversations, but we can certainly explore that for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I'd like to thank the airport staff. Airfest was pretty cool. It was kind of wet for a while, but it was interesting. My grandson had a great time. Learned a lot about the space shuttle stuff and space from Wendy. She's a very, very good speaker. It was great. So my thanks goes out to the staff that was there volunteering and putting their time in. And you already stole my thunder about sea fees, so that one's done. So I got a issue in Blaine, at least I think it's an issue, with our South Pier. We rebuilt the North Pier and the South Pier, and just for my fellow commissioners, I'll bring you up to speed a little bit on that. In 2015, before I became a commissioner, there was a meeting, commission meeting here, and some of our folks from Blaine, our industry members there, kind of petitioned to take over the South or North Pier when Dodd retired their business. So it seems that we don't have a pier for other vendors or fishermen to use or offload equipment or load equipment in Blaine. And the one particular pier I'm going to speak to is the South Pier. And since I've been a commissioner, it's been basically a storage pier. We rebuilt the pier, and I don't think we rebuilt it for storage. I think we rebuilt it for use by the public and use by vendor tenants or vendors. We're leasing that on a month-to-month basis to a tenant there who has a dock of their own with working hoists on it, and they are the ones that are using it kind of for storage. And I'd like to see that stop, and I'd like to be stop end of month to month on our South Pier and open it up to other folks to lease and use, as well as our tenants in the marina.
Somebody bring it up for us to see.
Oh, on Google?
So,
I don't believe it will put a hardship on the other company. At least I know it won't put a hardship on the other company that has it under month-to-month lease now. Yeah.
Not too far.
We actually moved a tenant off of that South Pier to the North Pier while we're rebuilding it, after we rebuilt the North Pier. That probably should move back to the South Pier so that the North Pier is opened up, because it would make it better. But at this point in time, with crab season going on, I don't think that'd be a correct thing to do. But sometime in the future, I think it should be switched back. Personally, I think it should be switched back to the original configuration we had there.
So who's leasing South Pier? Is that?
Boundary
Boundary.
Fish is leasing the South Pier, and as you can see, wherever it went.
Where did it go?
I don't know where it went.
It just got minimized. Just expand that window. You were doing fine.
I can't find the mouse.
Yeah, we can see it.
Wow, my screen's not working. Huh,
There you go, that one, yeah.
there we go.
So.
This is the south.
So
Yeah,
Boundary
that's the
Fish,
South
who's
Pier.
on the
Their pier
corner
is,
there.
yeah, their pier is the one all the way to the south there, big square pier
Yeah.
out there. They've
Yeah.
actually got 3 hoists on that pier.
But they're right now month-to-month leasing the.
Both
South.
piers, correct me if I'm mistaken, Shirley, but both piers are on a month-to-month lease, correct?
That's correct. The South Pier is on a month-to-month lease with Boundary Fish, and the North Pier is with Bingham Fox on a month-to-month basis. Both can be terminated with 30 days' notice.
Is it on a month-to-month on our request or on theirs?
Actually, at our request, because we've always, for the last 3 or 4 years, we have contemplated making one of those docks non-exclusive so that we can have additional commerce come through. So the timing may be right to terminate one of those. And I don't know which one, whether it's the north or the south, or relocate our tenant from the North Pier back to the South Pier. I will tell you that it will ruffle some feathers. There's no doubt about it. But I'm certain we could get there.
And I spoke to that. I don't think now would be the time to switch the North Pier tenant to the South Pier with the oncoming crab season. I think we have an opening on the 5th of September, which is 2 days from now. And then we go into the major crab season, October 1st. So if there's a switch to be done, it would be done in the springtime if we wanted to relocate.
Yeah.
But I feel that we did not spend the money we did on this dock to have it used for storage and used once in a while by someone who already has 3 hoists and a big dock on the corner.
Can they
It's
do
kept-
all of their operations with their existing hoists? That's your opinion, that they can?
Yes.
They don't,
That's what they're doing.
yeah.
So, I don't want to ruffle feathers, and I'm sure I'm not putting a hardship on those folks, or I would not ask for this, but they are putting a hardship on other folks in the county who would like to do business, that have done business historically across the dock above that when Dodd Marina was there. So, we also haven't rejuvenated our sawtooth yet, and we were supposed to some time ago had a crane on the corner of that. We discussed that, but we've held off on doing that. So actually, now that Dodd Marina is there, not there any longer, the fishermen are under the gun to go to one of these producers or the other to get their equipment off or put their gear on or ask for use of a dock, and that's not right. I mean, we've let this go on, I think, long enough. I think it needs to be stopped, and we need to adjust it back to the way it was so that everybody in the harbor has a dock they can use. They're certainly all paying for it. So,
Sounds like that would create a much more equitable ability for a variety of people to access and benefit from the infrastructure.
I would agree with that.
What's your
for
time
sure.
frame?
Well, you
I think we get through the crab season and look at it maybe the first of the year, and let me work with Boundary Fish to help them understand why we want to do it.
You're not going to want to raise after that, are you?
Well, maybe, let me think about that.
Hazard pay?
I'm not sure I'd like to wait quite that long.
Well, I'm happy to do it at any time that you would like.
It's, with the upcoming crab season, is part of the reason that we should allow, our fishermen to want to load gear that don't want to be committed to one of these people here. They have no way to get anything off or on their boat. unless you go for fish for one of the businesses there.
And it sounds to me that some of our current tenants are blocking the ability to sublease that dock. So, the other opportunity we may have is on a temporary basis is the Arawak pier. Maybe we can offer that up on a temporary basis.
That would be good, but the bulk of the crab fleet does fish out of Blaine, in that upper district. So, but anyways, we don't have to make a decision this evening. I just wanted to bring it up, and we can discuss it internally. And
Yeah, certainly. And contractually, we have to give 30 days notice. That's all we have to give. It would be nice to give a little bit longer notice to our tenant, though.
okay,
Yeah, I don't want to make them angry at some level, because it's a hard enough business.
okay. So-
Shirley, before you go on that, because that brought up one other thing.
Yes.
As we discussed this whole Blaine area, I want to visit the idea that we lease the space and have the tenants pay for the improvements. It really doesn't look like there's a lot of investment going on by our tenants under that model. So I'm not sure that that's a sustainable business model going forward for keeping us in a business-worthy mode.
Yeah,
So-
but you know what? I think that is going to change. Once we get our binding site plan complete in the Blaine industrial area, that will allow some of our tenants to make some additional investment. And that is underway. We have all the access improvements. That is, we have a consultant looking at that to understand what that infrastructure looks like. And we'll be back to the commission, I would say, in the next 30, 45 days with a lot of answers to your questions today.
Okay. I will be wanting to revisit that model, a business model.
Certainly.
And stay off the pump track. It'll help your ankles.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm bringing my beach bike to the pump track.
Triumph.
Is that the one with the basket on the handlebars? Cool.
That would be it, and it has like a bell on it.
Yeah,
too.
because we can't get lunch over there as it is now, so you got to bring your own, right?
Yeah, and I was going to sell flowers down
Okay.
there too.
No lights on it. I'm thinking that my BMW can go over there at night. I've got a headlight.
Sounds like this will be a feature for the grand opening.
Who would know? Night.
So one more thing I had about Blaine is, have we had any discussions with the city, any movement on the road thing here out on the end to Jorgensen Pier? Where are we at with that? Are they still in the denial mode, or?
Yeah, I need to set up a meeting with the City of Blaine Commissioner. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay.
I don't remember where we're at, so I'll get with Michael Jones and we'll get you an update on that. But it's a funding issue, I think, on Blaine's part. So unless we want to take it on at 100%, we're waiting for them to come up with the funding. But let me check in with them just to make sure.
We kind of discussed maybe we do it and they pay us back type thing or something,
Yeah.
so we can get it done. I know we've got a new mayor up there.
Yep.
So maybe the mindset may be a bit different.
No, I owe you a conversation with the City of Blaine, so I'll get that done.
Yeah, I just think that if we let the sleeping dog lie, we're gonna be sleeping for a long time here.
And, well, again, I think that fits into the overall plan. I mean, I'd love to see how that fits into all of it, and what is the big funding plan going forward for all of those elements?
But that is city property, that's not ours.
But it'll fit into it. I mean, the city's got to be involved at some level, like the city was down here, right? So what does that whole thing look like? How do we want it to look? And if we're going to fund it, for heaven's sakes, it should look the way we want it to look, right? And it should fit whatever it is that we have planned for it. So
I
I think
agree.
we maybe, that's one of the dangers of piecemealing things. I think sometimes you build some things and they may not fit whatever happens next. That's the reason I want to say, let's take a look at what we need for the fishing buildings down there, because if Walsh is not going to be there in 5 years, or if somebody else, if Boundary's not going to be there in 5 years, what do those buildings look like from our standpoint on a 20-year basis, not a 5-year basis? I'm done.
Okay.
My soapbox.
Okay. Anything further, Commissioner Shepard? No. Anything further, Commissioner Bell?
No, I'm just trying to figure out if we can beat last week's record and stay until 7:30.
I've got one thing from Alan Birdsall, that there's a crab opening on Friday, is that correct? Thursday. Oh,
5th, correct?
yes, today's the 3rd, yep.
I believe it's a tribal opening, it's not recreational and tribal?
Birdsall, manager of Marinas. Just wanted to give you a heads up, commissioners, that this Thursday and Friday we'll have a dual crab opening. It'll be a recreational and a tribal opening. We had that happen on August 15th. I know Commissioner Shepard and Executive Director Rob Fix, myself, and Andy Peterson, the Blaine Harbor Master, all got calls and complaints. It could have been a lot worse than what it was. It's just up in Blaine, you've got the little tiny 2-lane boat launch that works very well and accommodates most all of the activity that goes on up there until we have these dual openings. It just gets overwhelmed. You add to that the construction of Web House 1, losing a lot of our overflow parking. It gets pretty tight. Andy's foresight for the August 15th, he had 2 sheriff's officers, Blaine PD, as well as the Tulalip and the Swinomish tribes had some law enforcement folks there. Andy's crew towed 7 to 10 trailers that folks disconnected their vehicles and then drove off. And as soon as they, would tow that, 3 more would pop up. So this time we're going a little bit overkill. We got a couple of security guards coming down. We also had folks launch their boat and then load their crab pots off the boat launch float. And we only got 2 lanes. You can't do that. We have the sawtooth that they can be doing those kind of things. So we're going to have a couple of security guards there, one right down on the float, another one in the parking lot along with Blaine staff to try to make sure things, move as smoothly as possible. But if it's as congested as it was on August 15th, it could be tough. We had on August 15th many more tribes show up than what we've had in the dual openings in the past. And that it's a dual opening and it's a tribal opening, there's very little impact, if any, of we being able to ask and sway for when those openings are. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. We do know that's coming up. We believe that this will be the last dual opening of this season. Recreational crabbing closes down at the September 30th, and we've kind of caught rumors that this might be the last tribal opening this month, but that's a rumor. So just wanted to give you that heads up in case you get the calls.
We had discussed giving some of that feedback to WDFW about the challenges we and probably other facilities face when there's a dual opening. I don't expect them to change their mind about when they happen, but it's good for them to know that it does put extra pressure on organizations like ours.
And it's not the WDFW that has any control over the tribal openings. It's all the a tribal coalition. I can't think of the name of the council right now that does it, but it has nothing to do with
Northwest Indian Fisheries usually.
That's the one. Thank you, Commissioner. So WDFW has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
So on that note, I have a little to add to that. Now that we're talking about Blaine, I'm looking at the boat launch here, and I think I spoke with Director Fix about this, I believe, a little bit, about adding another runway there. If we could apron out to both sides a little bit and put 2 floats, have 4 lanes instead of 2, things are only going to increase in Blaine. Recreation's only going to increase. The tribal fishing effort's probably going to keep increasing. What we're seeing is more and more of the folks that go crabbing are going to smaller boats, so they can put them on a trailer, don't have to do moorage, and they take them home. So as a port, it's probably our obligation to make sure those folks can get their stuff in and out of the water in a timely manner. The public is having problems. The tribes are having problems. So we need to find a solution amongst whatever it is we're doing up there in this comprehensive plan we're talking about. I believe we have enough room. I went and looked at it here a week ago after I heard that we had all the confrontation there. I think we need to seriously think about widening that entry there. I think it can be fairly easily done. Of course, you got the permits and the in-water and all that jazz, never easy, but from a common sense standpoint of figuring it out, I think we can figure it out pretty easy. Whether we can get the stuff to do it or not, that's the other thing. But I think we need to think about changing that. And then maybe, when we get through with the web locker there and we shuffle that, the boneyard around that we have there, maybe we can think about graveling some more of that grass area there for overflow parking. If we put gravel in versus blacktop, is that more easily done?
We've been able to use just the grassy area as it is on these overflow kind of situations, and it doesn't happen very often where we need that kind of overflow. It's during these really, peak times. And the grassy area works fine.
Okay.
It's just, we don't have it right now because most of it's lay down area.
Okay. Anyways,
Mr. Briscoe, are you thinking the access point, the land access point, not additional dock or pier?
no, additional float and.
Additional float, you
So,
said.
so you would
Okay.
widen the lanes we have going in now?
Yeah.
And move that float to the left, another one to the right, split it kind of like we are here. So we would actually have, I guess you'd have 3 lanes then. You could maybe make it 4, but you'd at least add one more. 2 would be great if we could figure out how to fit that in there, but we're gonna have to do something there. And then really, it's the only boat launch around, for quite some, what's the next one, Birch Bay?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of,
Yeah, strategic.
it's kind of small for what it's serving. So, thank you, Alan. Anything else, gentlemen?
I got one more thing, I'm sorry.
One more?
I'm sorry. Just a really quick one. Q400 today hit some starlings on takeoff and circled back, landed at BLI. There were no injuries. The passengers were rebooked, but just in case you hear anything about that it was a Horizon flight that hit some birds and had to turn around.
Uh-oh.
Okay, thank you.
Feathers everywhere.
That's it for me.
Are we through? Meeting adjourned.